Hello, fortune seekers, and welcome back to the official Mega Moth Studios Podcast. This is episode 5, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most important and possibly one of the most frustrating elements of game design, teaching people how to play the game that you designed. And in the second part of the podcast, we're going to be talking about when the student teaches the master, or how we found out that our game was broken during playtesting and how we went about fixing it. So why don't you sit back, relax, and join us on this little journey that we're going to take. As always, I'm being joined today by my good friend, creative collaborator, and business partner, Daniel Ayub. Hey, Danny, how are you doing today?
Hey, Joel, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, and I'm realizing that I keep failing to introduce myself into the podcast, so why don't I go ahead and take care of that? I'm your host, Joel Watts. I am also the co-founder of Mega Moth Studios and the co-creator of X Seekers of Fortune, and Danny and I worked on that together. But yeah, today's been a hectic one for me, Danny. I have to admit, before sitting down to record this with you, I was all over town. Appointments followed by errands, followed by stopping for lunch, that sort of thing. And especially because we're getting all set up for our trip to Norman, Oklahoma coming up this weekend, taking off not tomorrow, but the next day. So there was a lot of work to get done before, taking off. I'm sure most of our viewers would understand the woes of, getting ready for a big trip like that.
Absolutely. You got to get everything done. You got to be prepared. Success is in the details. So.
That is very true. Well, have you been doing anything today to prepare for that trip?
Yeah, I've just been, taking it easy. Nothing too dramatic. Just hanging around the house and making sure I've got my packing list set up. This is a good concept for everyone at home. So in logistics, and everyone who's ever received a package from Amazon will understand this. You have this idea of a packing list that warehouses use to make sure they're loading the right things in the box. And so when you get that receipt piece of paper in that box, that's sort of a packing list. So I think when you're packing for a trip, it is a good idea to sit down and ask yourself, what do I need? And make a packing list of your own. So I'm working on that today. And I want to make sure I have all the goodies for all the people we're going to see, and most especially those very sweet make off with stickers that we got made for Comic Palooza that we never got to give out.
Oh man, I am so excited to get a hold of those because I've been wanting to have a sticker to put on my box because for people who are out of the know, and hopefully you'll be able to come out to one of our events soon and see before we actually get really official looking boxes. But we've just been using the kind of like cardboard boxes, the white cardboard that you would get from your local game store, just to put your random draft leftovers in. So I've been wanting to put a make off with sticker on that for the longest time. So they actually kind of looks more legit. But no, I really agree with you also on the whole packing list. I personally do. I would recommend to anybody out there, if you don't have a Notes app, get a Notes app. Apple Notes is great. I would highly recommend it. If you're an iPhone Apple user, just go ahead and use that. But if you're not, there's plenty out there. But use the checklist feature, create checklist for trips, because that way everything that you need to pack with you. And when you're packing up to come back home, you can double check the checklist to make sure you put everything in the bag. And you can get down to the minutia of even checking off how many pairs of socks you're bringing with you. But it's just a good idea to have that to reference.
I myself am more of a spreadsheet junkie, so Google Sheets, Microsoft Excel. I like making a fancy packing list with drop downs and things like that, so I can indicate when I have packed something.
What would the drop down saying? Packed, unpacked, unregulated? I don't know. What else would you put in the drop down for a package?
It'd probably be like just a simple packed yes or no.
Oh, what's the fun in that? You have to have the existential answer. I don't know. Well, yeah. Speaking of existential
Existential,
answers.
yeah.
Yes, I can't speak today. That's all that running around has got me all tongue tied. I wanted to go into the question of the week. Now we always like to we love to kick off the show with a question of the week. That way that you get to know myself and Danny better. So this week's question, I wanted to keep it easy and just take a little trip down memory lane. Danny, what was the first video game console you remember owning, and what was the first video game you played on it?
Well, it was definitely the Super Nintendo.
Awesome.
And I mean, honestly, I think it's probably Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario World. Like, I don't. That's the name of a game, right?
Yes, the Super Mario World is the Mario game that was for the Super NES.
Was that the first one with Yoshi?
Oh, that was the first one that it featured Yoshi. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first game that I remember playing on the SNES.
Man, that is a really great first game to ever have because that's just one of the all-time greats. I remember getting that one for Christmas a few years later. Just really quick before I give my answer, is there any, do you have a favorite Mario power-up?
In Super Mario World specifically, or in any Mario?
Well, I'm sure I would say in any Mario.
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I always in Super Mario World, it's definitely the cape. He has the cape in that, right? Like he can run and then fly.
Yeah.
That was my favorite power up in that version of Super Mario. I mean, I've liked the raccoon tail at various points. I think that's a good one. But I do want to say, just for the record, that my favorite Mario game of all time. I don't know if it's technically a Super or not because I've not been as versed in the Mario, games as I probably should be. But I really love Mario RPG. That was my favorite game growing up.
That's a good question if that is a Super Mario game. And that, quite topical. I'm sure you saw the news. Or did you?
I absolutely don't know what
Oh yeah, I forget you're an adult with children, and I'm the one who's the child, basically the childless, bachelor. No, they're remaking Super Mario RPG for the Nintendo Switch right now with upgraded graphics, so you're going to be able to share it with your children.
Oh,
and it looks really good. At first, when I was watching the trailer, at first they were showing a cutscene, and I was like, I don't know if the graphics translate to being this good. Because the charm of those games were they were trying to fake 3D graphics with isometric views and, things like that. But once they got into the actual gameplay of Mario walking on the map in battles, it was it does what any good old school game should do when it's upgraded, which is it looks like how you remember it looking.
Ooh.
Kind of the nostalgia and your memory sort of smooth everything out and make it look better in your brain.
So yeah, please.
Yeah, it's a full-blown remake of Mario RPG.
Ooh, I used to really, really love it. And I had a friend, his name was Alex Johnson, and I don't think we have to bleep this one out because it's a good memory. He invited me over to his house, and he was super obsessed with Super Mario, and he had made these very, very, very high-quality Mario figurines at age, I don't know. We couldn't have been older than 8 years old, or no, I have no idea actually. When did Mario RPG came out? Maybe I was older. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I mean, I remember getting it. It was a big game for me. And here, sorry, I'm going to send you just a link to the trailer so you can check it out whenever you get a chance. I remember, I feel like I was 9, 10. I remember I was feeling like I was old enough to get some of the
9, 10 sounds
humor.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like they had a little bit more, they had some jokes for the people who knew,
The Axon Rangers, they were in the game, right? That was the
thing.
And then what was and the Gino and Malo?
Yeah. They're all back, baby.
What was the name of the guy who had the weird facial hair and red, and he you had to rescue a princess from him?
I don't recall his name, but he had the big tower. Is that right?
Yeah. I don't remember what his name was. I love the game because it was you got to see, so much of Mario is just about Bowser and Koopas, and it's kind of cool to be oh no, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in Mario that we never even talk about.
Oh yeah, it's the first time, and very similar to Breath of the Wild. I would really like them to because Mario has been very much going on like multi-planet,
Yeah.
multi like land things in the past few games. It would be nice to take the 3D Mario thing and just bring it down to the Mushroom Kingdom and maybe Breath of the Wild it where before Breath of the Wild it was like the previous like Ocarina of Time was like everybody's like version of Hyrule they had in their mind, at least for me. And then once Breath of the Wild came out, it so expanded Hyrule and put in all the nuances that it really captured, like cemented it. I'm really loving this conversation, but we can't just turn into another nostalgia video game podcast. So let me just answer the question of the week for myself really fast. And it is pretty simple because mine is just one generation prior to yours. I remember my father, he was at some work event and I had to be like 2.5, 3-ish, somewhere around there. It's like it's hard for me to remember what came first, my brother or the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, into my home. But I remember my dad won it at some sort of work event, and he brought it home, and it had the combination Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt cartridge. So one cartridge, two games. Nintendo, like, you can say what you will, but they will, like, they will give you value packs down the line. And so this must have been near the end of its lifespan. I think Mario 3 had come out and the Super NES was probably just around the corner, but they were giving these away. So they were able to give it away pretty easily as a door prize. And yeah, I just remember playing Super Mario Brothers for the first time and not even understanding how to jump and like dying to the first, mushroom guy the Goomba that comes at you on the screen. And, there's been plenty said about World 1-1 in Super Mario Brothers, how basically the first few obstacles you go through teach you how to play the game and teach you everything you need to know moving forward in the game. And it's beautiful game design. It's constantly referenced. So, as game designers, we're designing a card game, a tabletop game, but it is it is good for us to like definitely learn from other games. And I always gravitate towards simple games like Mario Brothers, like the 2D Mario Brothers, which, also there's another new 2D Mario Brothers coming out called Super Mario Wonder.
I think I saw that trailer. That one
Yeah.
I think I did see because it had some pretty unique graphics, like animations of Mario doing some stuff. But it's a side scroller, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's which is really exciting for me because I always have a soft spot in my heart for the side-scrolling Marios due to that being the first game I ever touched basically in my life. But yeah, no, I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to someday embark on a video game journey with you as well, making a video game. But right now we have to talk about what it's like to make a card game because that's
Before
the
we
game
do
we've
that,
made.
though,
Yeah,
I
sure.
do want to invite the listeners to weigh in the comments and let us know what their first system and game was. I'd really like to understand like what the spread is. How old are
Yeah.
the people out there, and what are they playing? Where does their nostalgia lie? So yeah, let us know. And obviously, open invitation on any question of the week. Let us know what your answer is. We'd love to get to know you guys better as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why we asked the question of the week. We want you to get to know us. And yeah, we want to get to know y'all, the people who are interested in X Seekers of Fortune or just our journey in game design, period. And yeah, I'm sure that we're going to feel a little old with our Mario Brothers answers when people are coming in with Minecraft and Fortnite as their answers. But yeah, but let's go ahead and take a step into today's topics. And as I teased up top, I will say we're flying a little bit by the seat of our pants. We knew in general we wanted to talk about teaching the game, but we hadn't really ironed it out completely until right before we started, which, is perfectly fine because, teaching the game is something that we're still learning about. It might actually be something that we can talk about with each other as much as anything else. So, as folks know, if you've listened to every episode up until now, our big debut was at the Houston Comic Palooza, which is Houston's version of a comic convention. We were invited by somebody we've been working with on the game. His name's LD. And we had basically, leading up to that convention, we had gotten our prototype decks ready. We had ordered play mats that's specifically to make the game experience more thorough and full. But we had only taught the game so many times to so many people. So I was actually kind of like trying to figure out what is the best way of teaching a game to to a stranger that we've just met, because everybody we taught the game to at that point was pretty much a somebody we knew, except for like one exception. So yeah, going into that, Danny, did you have any thoughts, or how did you approach the idea of like teaching the game to people at the convention?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy the way we made X Seekers of Fortune, in the sense that we wrote down iterations of the rules, 1, 2, 3, 4, but at a certain point we had made a lot of adjustments, especially after we introduced the heroic feats and really started kind of going through the game and having to encounter unique game states and figure out how the rules should govern them. And so we, at the time of Comic Palooza, hadn't even put together a quick start guide. So, I mean, at that point, the rules were really just in our heads. And, we play so much, like it kind of takes you out of it when you've been play testing the game and playing it at a high level. And then all of a sudden you have to like look at it from the perspective of somebody new. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even really occur to me that I need a strategy for teaching the game until we were sitting down. And I was just like, okay, wait, I mean, that's not 100% true, because, we did a lot of demos online and I had practiced kind of talking people through their turns and stuff. But I don't know, for some reason that first in-person experience was a little bit different. But I think you have to recognize that as you begin to teach people the game, not only are you teaching them how to play the game, but you're teaching yourself how to teach the game.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing, there's the old Malcolm Gladwell like observation. He wrote the entire book about it, the 10,000 hours of practice to become a master of something. So there was going to be nothing compared to how many times we taught the game that day at Comic Palooza, probably eclipsed how many times we had taught the game before that date period. Like we had taught the game maybe half a dozen times before that day. And that day we probably taught 20, 25 people how to play it. And yeah, I think I was maybe a little bit more, I don't want to say proactive, but I was definitely concerned about like, what's the best way to introduce people. You want to sit people down and they're expecting you to provide them entertainment and to provide them a good experience. So I was definitely concerned with how best to go about teaching people the game. And I actually went to the YouTube channel. Well, because I think I typed in how to teach games or something to that effect, how to teach people to play board games. And I have been watching a lot of reviews by Sit Down and Shut Up, the board game, I guess you could call them board game gurus. They create some amazing reviews for board games that are like entertaining to watch, even if you don't know anything or have no plans or desires to play the game, because it's well past just informative. And one of the main guys who works for that site, made a video called How to Teach People How to Play Board Games. And I watched that video, and the main thing I took from him, because he had a lot of great tips, but his tips were more formulated for your standard board game teaching scenario, which is, I am going to teach my friends at my house or one of their houses how to play a game, and I'm going to specifically be teaching a small group one time. So I couldn't take everything from what he said, because some of it was just not going to be applicable for like, trying to get somebody taught and, having fun and, shaking their hand, asking them how they're doing, and then get somebody else in the chair. But one of the big things that he said that I took very seriously was how to introduce your game. And if I remember correctly, and it's been a minute since I watched the video or taught anybody how to play the game, but I believe it is, you answer these 3 questions before you start teaching the actual like gritty rules. You answer, who are you? How do you win? And why this is going to be fun.
That's great. Those are all super key things to understand as you're sitting down to play a game, right? Like you want to be, everyone approaches games differently, but generally speaking, you kind of want to understand the perspective from which you're going to be playing the game. You're going to want to understand what you need to be doing to actually have a chance at winning the game. But it is really, really nice to understand on the front end, like, where is the fun coming from? And obviously, as you're playing a game, you're going to discover what's fun for yourself all the time. But it is kind of cool to kind of know in advance, a little teaser of, hey, this is where the fun's going to come from. So I think those are great questions to have teed up when you're getting ready to sit down with somebody.
Yeah, plus they're probably going to be the first things that somebody tells the next person about the game. They're going to, they're going to be like, oh, I just played for our game. Oh, I just played a game where you were like a Indiana Jones like adventurer, and you were trying to, get through adventures and it was fun because you got all these, these like magic like cards, these Action X cards that like made the game different, and you were like matching, doing this matching game the entire time, that sort of thing. You want to create the package around the experience for them to be, to hand to them, for them to be able to hand to other people. And there's a lot, I mean, we can go into like the idea of marketing, and how to make an idea that perpetuates itself, which is something we've definitely thought a lot about for making this game and the experience. But I think that's like one of the first places that you can create that. It's like what you say about the game to your new players is probably what they're going to say about the game. What they're probably going to say about the game to the next person that they teach. And in case that picked up, I think my kitten is annoying my little doggy so much that the dog lashed back at it.
Oh, no. That sounds like par for the course for Winston.
Yeah, no, he's in his jerk era for sure.
Yeah, so absolutely. So, I mean, I think that's a great point, Joel. I mean, when you're teaching people to play the game, they're going to really sort of absorb what you're telling them, and they'll add their own things, and they'll mix it up. But the more you can do to articulate things in a memorable way, in a way that presents the game you want to present it, these little sound bites or talking points that just kind of stick in a person's head, that's going to make sure that it's easier for them to teach your game to other people, and that it's going to embed in that some sense of the flavor and the way that you want to be positioning the game with the players, right? So much of sitting down to play a game, also in addition to, like not discounting the game in any way, the rules, the flavor, the mechanics, but the mindset of the player sitting down is tremendously important. And anything you can do to excite people and make them want to sit down and make them give them the opportunity or make it easier for them to relate specific mechanics and elements of the game to experiential things that you want them to associate with it. I think that's a awesome opportunity that everyone should be taking advantage of. Some examples from our game, I think, are the way we've named the heroic feats, but I think the best example is probably the way we just kind of talk about the relationship between leads, adventures, and Action X cards. And Joel, I don't know if you want to kind of walk people through kind of how we kind of walk people step by step and show the interrelation between those three things as a simple way to express the flow of our game.
Well, let me see if I get this off the dome. But basically, what I did, and in fact, I separated out. I took one of our prototypes and pulled some of the cards out of it in order to have them ready to show off. But essentially, in X Secrets of Fortune, you're an adventurer who's trying to you're an adventurer looking for treasure. To find treasure, you have to complete adventures, and to complete adventures, you have to follow leads. So you match leads to complete adventures to gain access to find treasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when you complete 5 adventures, you win the game.
Yep. You follow those leads to complete those adventures to get the treasure. And, it's interesting because when you're playing with somebody and you explain to them, like, okay, so you see that bottom, that's the reward line. Whenever you complete an adventure, you're going to get that reward. And oftentimes I notice it doesn't resonate with them immediately. But that first time that they kind of collect the leads and they put it together, and then they're like, okay, you completed an adventure, now you get a reward. There's a reason why people go on adventures.
Yeah.
And then their like eyes light up a little bit and they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, please give me my reward.
Yes, that is so true. And I often say often when you're telling people things, you're telling them just to prepare them for when you're telling them the second time. And the second time, you're still preparing them for the third time they hear it. It's like, I'm pretty sure it's a marketing thing where people have to be aware of you before they'll even start, kind of taking you seriously. So I think that also applies to teaching a game. It's like, I can teach somebody the entirety of X Seekers of Fortune, but before they've touched a card. But none of that's going to make any sense to them if they haven't touched a card and gone through the motions themselves. Because we're humans. I believe being a human is a very physically experiential experience. And for us to learn something, you learn through experience, through the act of doing. So, and I think a lot of us say that, like, just, like, I know I'm the kind of person, if I sit down to learn a game, I basically say, let's just start playing, and you just, you teach me things as they become relevant. And I think that doubly applies for how we do have this complexity creep in our game that we can probably get into, because a lot of people are coming to the game with different levels of experience with other games. Some people, like, maybe the most complicated game they've played is Uno, a great game, but pretty simple,
straightforward. Yeah, it's
straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah.
And some people come and they are TCG sharks, sitting down. And the gulf between those two folks in terms of how quickly they can learn the game is noticeable. If you've played a TCG before, especially Magic the Gathering, we have to call out one of the greats. If you've played those games before, you're pretty much ready to compete in the big leagues, like after a game. Yeah, you're ready. You're ready to go. But if this is like your first really complicated game, we have to sort of more slowly introduce some of the concepts. It might be 4 or 5 games before you're utilizing all your toolkit, and mostly because of the heroic feats. Now, Danny, I was going to ask, Danny, do you have a particular way that you like to, roll out the game, or how do you like to approach teaching the heroic feats to folks who aren't used to this style of game?
Part of the reason we designed the game the way we designed it is because we wanted to make the game accessible to people who maybe don't have any TCG experience. One of the things that we love is that, TCGs offer a really fun play experience. There's lots of opportunities to express yourself, lots of interesting player decisions, but there's a complexity wall that it's locked behind, and there's not a great on-ramp to that. So we devised the game and the way we teach the game such that there are 3 stages of complexity. So stage 1 is just the match engine, what we call the match engine. Literally, the first time we play it with a lot of people, we're taking out the leads, we're taking out the adventures, and we're not using the Action X cards at all. We're not talking about the heroic feats at all. We're just playing the matching game, which is, hey, okay, you're drawing your leads, you're flipping up your adventures, you're revealing your adventures, you're trying to complete adventures, we introduce you to the final quest, and then that's it. And so a lot of people, especially if they don't have TCG experience, they're like, oh, that's a lot of fun. Like, I want to do that. And we're like, okay, cool. Like, are you ready for the next thing? And they're like, what's the next thing? And the next thing is the Action X deck. And the Action X deck is like, okay, you understand the basic mechanics of the game because you played with the match engine. Now, these cards modify the rules of the basic game by giving you advantages or disadvantages to your opponent. And you're going to see that the game becomes different every single time you play it, more complex, more interesting. And so they see it, and the first time after playing the match engine, they read that first Action X card, and they see what it does, and they're like, oh my god, that's cool. So wait, I get to do this, and then I get to do that? And you're like, yeah. And then they play that, and for some people, that's a lot to onboard, so they need a few more games playing with that. And then the last phase is introducing the heroic feats. And what I've found, and I think you have found as well, Joel, the best way to introduce the heroic feats is to wait for the moments in gameplay that required us to create that specific heroic feat to begin with. So, you're dealing with, being low on leads, and you're like, it's going to take me forever to refill my hand in leads, and you're behind. You're like, well, this is why we created Dig Within. Did you know that you can actually take one of your adventures, one of your maps, and scrap it in order to draw 2 leads? You can do that up to once per turn if you're behind or tied. And they're like, oh, really? I can do that? And then slowly but surely, they pick it all up because it resonates then. because they're encountering the game states that would require you to have access to the tool for the game to continue to be fun and moving. And that's the best way I've found to slowly, gradually, incrementally, however you want to say it, teach people how to play the full game.
Yeah. And that's awesome when we got time to do like a one-on-one like learning session, or when you're, hopefully when you buy the game at home and you're teaching it to a friend, you can do that incremental thing. It was a whole other beast to throw people in, try to get them a little bit of everything all at once, with the in-person demos that really it's like we have time to play a game. But yeah, I think that you're right. Teaching people how to use heroic feats in times where it's relevant really resonates with them. It makes them understand why they're there in the first place. Same with sabotage. That's like, oh wow, I can't progress my game because of these, this relic that they have. And it's like, well, that's what sabotage is for. It's like if their relic is really so bad for you that you don't feel like you can progress, then you need to take the time to get rid of it, and it is worth getting rid of when you're in that situation. The only other thing I want to add to this portion of the conversation, though, is just the stark difference of teaching people digitally versus teaching people when you have the physical cards right there in front of you. I don't know how different it felt for you, but it's whatever was, at Comic Palooza, whatever disadvantage we had to the fact that we had to really churn people through and try to teach them as quickly as possible to, get somebody else sitting across from us, was made up for, in my opinion, at the fact that online you just don't have like your hands to show people, your eye contact to show people. It was so easy just to reach over the table and be like, these cards here are this and these cards here are that. I mean, have you noticed like that big of a difference between digital versus physical teaching?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, playing the game physically, teaching physically, it's just easier. It's more intuitive. I mean, it's more natural, you know. Tabletopia is a fantastic program, but there's a learning curve to it. And you're not only teaching people how to play the game, you're teaching people how to use the program a lot of the times when you're teaching online. And so that in of itself can create additional challenges. I'd say, like, to the extent that there's an upside teaching people digitally versus online, I think, maybe the ability to blow up a card and see it much bigger and it be backlit. And I feel like those, some of the Action X prototypes have a lot of small print on them. And that's something that we're going to correct for the final product, obviously. But, your prototype is your prototype. It's not going to be perfect. And I think that some of that text is easier to read online because you have the ability to double click on a card and see it blown up. But other than that, I mean, I'm not sure I can think of another real benefit to playing online. Maybe not having to physically shuffle cards. We've got some pretty tall decks, so.
Yeah, that's true. We do. I mean, I think anytime you have a deck that's over, your standard playing card deck, which is 52, I would say 60. Once you start going above 60, it can be a little cumbersome to shuffle. So we have to be mindful of that. But there is something to, and I will just say, like, the vibe of playing digitally versus the vibe of playing physically is so much different. Whenever I play physically and I'm across from my rival, it just feels so much more tense. Like I'm second guessing every decision. I'm looking at every, like, I just like, you look down and it's just like, it sears. It's like right there versus digitally. It feels much more like just a playground and we're just having fun, which is funny. But, my ideal version of fun is kind of that high stress situation. I play games for the stress that it gives me because I don't get that much stress in my day-to-day life. So yeah, I definitely prefer the physical game, and I prefer teaching the game physically because just your ability to just reach over, grab cards, throw them out there, show people, makes a huge difference. And Yeah, if you take anything away from this segment of the episode, I would want to just go back to what I learned from Shut Up and Sit Down. When you're introducing a game to your, if you're a game designer and you're watching this because you want to design your own game, when you are teaching people, whether it be a play test or a demo, start with the table setting. And this is why theme is so important, because theme sticks in people's craw. Start with the who are you when you're playing this game? How do you win the game? Because I often think that's the most important thing you need to know before you learn any rules of the game, because it kind of contextualizes like what you're using the other rules and the other mechanics for, because you know how to win the game. And finally, this is going to be fun, at least in your opinion. And that's like where the most genuine answer comes from. Because what I find fun about X Seekers of Fortune and what Danny finds fun about X Seekers of Fortune, they're going to be like a little different, but people can really tell you're being genuine when you answer that from your heart. Anyways, did you have anything else to add to that, Danny?
For me, I would just say the other thing that I would want people to take away as a key takeaway is thinking about how you can articulate those key points about your game that you want people to remember and be able to repeat to other people in a way that is sticky and logical. Take the time, really bullet point out what you feel like you need to articulate, and think through how you can do so in a way that is going to be memorable. And if you feel like there are multiple steps that need to be taken to teaching the game, don't feel like you have to teach everyone everything all at once. Meet people where they are, show them the version of the game that you feel like they're ready for, and incrementally layer things on top of it, rather than throwing them in the deep end and creating a negative play experience out of the gate. I think there's a number of people that, had we forced them to play the full game from the start, they would have had a terrible time and not even entertained playing the game again. Whereas we've had a lot of instances where people start with the first phase and that's what they need, and they slowly graduate up and they feel accomplished as they graduate through the phases. So that would be my 2 cents.
Okay. Well, I think that was a great point to make. My point being the introduction, your point being like the long game of the teaching process. So that's going to wrap up the first part of our conversation here today, which was about teaching, how to teach your board game to folks and what that process looks like. And after the break, we're going to be moving into the tale of how our game was broken twice and how we went to go and fix it. So we'll be right back with you after this break. Welcome back to the Mega Moth Studios Podcast, the official podcast for all things Mega Moth Studios related. I'm here with Danny Ayub, and we are getting into the second topic for today's show, which is we just wanted to go over the tale of, because, well, basically, we were talking about teaching the game, and sometimes you teach people how to play the game, and sometimes the people that you're teaching, they become the master and they teach you about something you didn't see in the game yourself. And that is when you realize that you have a broken game on your hands. And Danny and I don't want to say we're full-blown experts at this, but we can at least say that one person twice showed us how our game was broken. And we basically had to, hit the emergency button and have like quick conversations about how to fix it. So Danny, I want to put this in your court. Do you remember how this is? You're such a good storyteller. You might be able to really set the scene.
So, Patrick, who we've referenced before, a good friend of ours, who, is a phenomenal Magic player, hasn't ever had the time to really put in the energy to make a run at playing pro or not. But I have no doubt that if he really put his mind to it, he could go pro. But to the extent that's even a thing anymore. That's a different conversation.
That sad fiddle music should be plugged in right there.
Yeah. Pat is a phenomenal TCG player, strategy card game player, and we knew that he was someone who's really, really going to be important to us in this process in order for us to get the most out of playtesting. And so if we knew anyone who was going to teach us how to play our game better than we understood it, we knew that it was going to be Pat, who would find something that we weren't aware was there. Pat broke the game not once but twice. And here are the times. Okay, so the first time was Joel and I for a very long time wanted to introduce a second win condition to the game, an alternate win condition to the game, and it took us a long time to figure it out. Finally, we had developed the breakthrough victory. We knew we wanted it to have to do with collecting Action X cards. It took us a while to get to a point where we felt like we had even a workable solution, and then we were very proud of it. We found something that we thought worked great, and we had played it a bunch, and it played exactly the way that we wanted it to. And then we showed it to Pat, and we're like, Pat, check it out. Like, you can win this game. You can win the game this way now. And he looked at it and he watched it and he was just like, okay. And then he just stopped playing the game. He like did not play what we would call X Seekers of Fortune at all, and just started using this new, because I mean, Breakthrough at that point was a completely new heroic feat, and he just spammed it. And it was like, oh, okay, so people can just not play this game at all, spam it, and win the game without completing a single adventure. How did we miss that?
In fact, yeah, I know. In fact, it was actually advantageous for you not to play the game as normally intended. So I think to really, tell the story, because I think this is like it is almost like a cinematic moment. That night, it's like we invited Pat to play test because we were super excited about the breakthrough win mechanic, win condition, and we wanted just to be like, let's just take a check in with Patrick. And you played against him, and he was like on his way to winning, and you I think had just like a miracle turn, you just drew the right things and played the right cards, and were able to use the breakthrough win condition to win a turn before he was, the next turn I think he was going to win the traditional way. And then he was like kind of like, okay, well, let's try it again. Let's see how this goes. And then I played against him one time, and yet again, I think very similarly, I was able to, I was playing the game like normal, but at the last moment, I was able to zag and go for the breakthrough win. And I think that's when it clicked for him. And he said, okay, I'm going to show you, he theorized it. He told us what he was going to do. It's like, I'm just going to go for the breakthrough win condition. And I think at the time, basically, it was almost the same as it is today. The breakthrough win condition was if you break through and you have 7 Action X cards between your action zone, your action zone and your archive zone, you win the game.
I don't even think you had
and there was no.
I think you just needed to have 7 cards in play at that point.
Possibly, and the breakthrough lets you get there. So so basically, all he did was so in that third game, I solved an adventure first and foremost. And even though I knew what he was going to do, for some reason I really went hard, and I played I had an Action X card that I played from my hand, and he thwarted it. And then I solved an adventure, drew an Action X card, and played that from my hand, and he thwarted that one too. And then I passed turn, and he was behind, and then he just started doing his solution, which I think one of the things that enabled him to be able to break through so efficiently was because you need to break through, you need 3 matching leads. But back then you just needed 3 to discard 3 leads, 3 of any lead. So you drew 1 card for turn, you get 1 lead for the beginning of your turn, then he would use his adventure that he drew to dig within. So that got him 3 leads. It did not matter what leads they were. He didn't have to sculpt his hand. He just had 3 leads, breakthrough. So every turn he gets 1 guaranteed breakthrough. That means there's a 7-turn clock on the game, minimum. And yeah, I mean, and he just and not only that, but you're drawing Action X cards with breakthrough. So if your opponent isn't doing the same strategy, you the way that we described it is you're basically playing a control deck versus an aggro deck in Magic. It's just you just have an answer. You have so many answers. You have so many tools. The relics, the feats, the sites that you're drawing are all working against your opponent. Maybe I solved 1 more adventure that game, but I did not get anywhere compared to what his board state looked like at the end. And I had to just sit back and be like, yeah, that was not fun.
Yeah, well,
at least not for me.
Here's the thing. I mean, and this was the biggest takeaway. Obviously, we learned the game was broken, but it was an important lesson for me as a game designer in general, which I think this is something that everyone who's out there designing games and thinking about designing games, can learn from, which is sometimes you miss really, really big things that are broken in the game because you're thinking about the game from the perspective of how you're supposed to play the game. And oftentimes, because you're thinking about how you're supposed to play the game, you miss the degenerate alternate strategy that someone can come up with. Look, we catch a lot of degenerate strategies as we're pitching ideas back and forth. You're not going to pitch everything. You're not going to catch everything. I mean, there's just too much that can happen. Interactions can happen in a complex game where you're just not going to see it, especially if you're not thinking about it just from the standpoint of what is the optimal way to win the game, instead being like, okay, here's the way the game is played and people are going to play it. And so it really, really behooves you to step out from the game and to take that alien perspective and say, okay, if I was looking at this without understanding what the game designers intended for me to do, and if I understood how to win the game, how would I go about doing it? And is it how the game designers want me to play, or is it actually to do some degenerate thing that has nothing to do with how the game is intended to be played?
Yeah, very true. It is hard to catch those things in this intricate web that we weave. And yeah, I think as the game creators, we don't see everything because we are approaching it mostly from the correct way of playing. And this often happens in video games too. There you have an entire graphical physics system to have to worry about, where, I often see, people who really like to mess with video games, they'll just start really pushing the boundaries from the moment they hold the controller and control is given to the player. They'll just start running as fast as they can in a circle to see if the graphics can actually keep up. And often they can't, and these, even in the double AAA games, like the graphical system is held together with bubblegum shoestring and a prayer. And if you really just try to play the game outside of just walking at the normal speeds, it falls apart. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about a graphic system. We just have to worry about a rule system. But the second way that Patrick broke the game, which was only I want to say this happened within a month, like weeks apart from each other, maybe, but it also involved Dig Within. Do you want to set up the combo that Patrick utilized to just create a perpetual stalemate in the game while he gained advantage?
Yeah, I mean, Dig Within definitely is it's probably the thing we need to be most careful about as we're designing new things for the game, because it is something that can enable you to have an explosive infusion of resources, and then depending on what the incentives are for the player, if the player doesn't care about being behind and they just want to use resources, Dig Within becomes a problem really fast. So what Dig Within says is that once per turn, on your turn, if you're if you are losing or at parity, you may scrap a map, which is essentially just discarding a map from your active adventure zone in order to draw 2 leads. And then there's another ability that we have that you can only do when you're at parity or losing, and that's called Infiltrate. And what Infiltrate says is once per turn on your turn, you may discard any 2 leads to have your rival reveal their hand, you choose a card, and they discard it. Well, actually, they bury it, right? They bury it, which is the distinction there is simply that they're putting the card on the bottom of the deck as opposed to in the discard pile to ensure that the rival can't just pick it up immediately. Anyway, so it used to be, you could infiltrate once per turn, you could dig within once per turn. There was no restriction there. And there didn't seem to be a really clear reason why there should be until Patrick showed us something that, in retrospect, should have been a little bit more obvious. But again, this is where, thinking about how you want people to play the game versus how they will play the game becomes important again. Do you want?
No, yeah. I wanted to step in here because I'm the unfortunate soul who had to go through both of these situations. So in the first example, it clicked in Patrick's head between games, and he basically said, going into the next game, I am going to show you. He was like a gauntlet throwdown. I am going to show you how your game has a flaw, and that's how he showed us the breakthrough mechanic, which we still need to go back and talk about how we fixed that. But we can talk about the fixes for both here at the end. The difference with the Infiltrate Dig Within combo is he realized it mid-game, and I feel like I realized that he realized, that the game was broken, in real time. It's as though it almost started to feel like Groundhog's Day, because the way that this combination worked is you draw a lead per turn. It's yet again, it's this lead advantage that you get from Dig Within. You draw one lead for your turn, and then you sacrifice your map, or you scrap your map to draw two more. That gets you 3 leads for your turn, and then you only have to discard 2 leads to infiltrate, which takes away you discard 2 leads, and that takes away your opponent's lead that they drew for their turn. And they can't, if you're behind and they're ahead, they can't use Dig Within on their turn. So they only got to draw the 1 lead per turn. And you use your 3 lead advantage. You take 1 away, or you take 2 away to take away their 1 lead. Now you're up 1 lead, and they have made 0 progress. So it became like, it took me 2 or 3 turns of going through this process to realize that I was in like this Groundhog's Day type scenario, where it's like, it clicked for me, and I'm like sitting there, and I know Pat's already figured it out. He figured it out like 2 turns ago, and now it's dawning on me. And you're on the outside watching in, but it's dawning on me. It's like, oh, I'm in stasis. I'm not making any forward progress. The best I can hope for is to draw an adventure that's the exact combination of leads in my hand. And I don't even think I had 5 leads in my hand. So it's not like I had wiggle room. And that was like my only way to move forward, while Patrick is sitting there going up 1 lead per turn and sculpting his hand. So he could, potentially get to, once he decided, okay, I'm done with this game, I'm going to move forward, he could amass. Well, he couldn't amass that many adventures, but he could put himself in a situation where he could possibly have solved multiple adventures in 1 turn. So he could have gone from being like behind to being in the final quest in the course of 1 turn if he had stayed in this long enough. And I think we got to the point where we're like, either we decided, okay, we understand something's wrong here, so we have to solve it, and we either scrapped playing that game, or we just were like, okay, let's just move forward, pretend that we've solved that issue. We'll figure out the solution. But we basically had an emergency meeting with Patrick on the line while, once like the two, like once Patrick and myself realized what we were doing, and you observed it happening for a few more turns, and it clicked for all of us that the game, this was it was broken. It was no fun to be in my shoes in that situation. And I don't think it was that fun for Patrick either. I mean, it was just a tactic to elongate the game indefinitely.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the reasons why we missed it, is like, okay, you can do that, but why? Like, why would you do it? You're not getting ahead. But then you realize, like, it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, like, I think because you are incrementally getting 1 lead per turn, I think there maybe was like a countermeasure you could have taken, but it ultimately ends up in just like some really terrible stalemate. And even if maybe it's not something we think anyone would ever do, it's better to just kind of patch those holes when you see them, just to make sure that someone's out there not just being a Grinch.
Yeah, you could say that it's called sandbagging, I believe. You could just sandbag the entire game.
In a competitive setting, it's certainly possible that someone's just going to try to run a clock.
Or you're in a situation, but especially with the way that we want to run our competitive scene, where it's about overall points that you gain per each game. If they know that if you can't develop your game board state and they could just run out the clock, then you can't gain enough points to take you from second place to first place, or move you in the top 8. And if they're either spiteful, or that's to their advantage because they're the ones who would be getting knocked down. I mean, I want to say that there's been a few controversies in Formula One, because that's based, it's a point system over the course of mini games. It's not just who wins the race that day. Yeah, that person gets to celebrate, but if you're going for the big prize, you're trying to, do well over the course of mini races. And I think that there's been a few times where people intentionally sabotaged other racers in order to keep them, to keep the points where they are. It's like it's better for me that you lose this race than it is for me to win this race. So I might as well just knock you out of this race, even if it takes me out too.
Absolutely. But those were definitely tough medicine. I mean, I do want to just say before we jump to the fixes, when things like that happen with your game, I mean, especially when it takes you a long time to even get to the point where you have the starting point of a solution or something that you thought solved, something that you really cared about solving in the game, it can be really disheartening. And you can really say like, oh man, but, take it as a good thing. I mean, you don't want to ship a broken game. You found it out. And honestly, if you put your time and energy into trying to solve that problem, you sleep on it, you're probably going to come up with something that you like. So, yeah, and that's exactly what we did, right?
Yeah, no. So to go through the solutions, I guess I'll go through both of them back to back. I think Breakthrough was a little bit. It's funny because also in this we had the two paths to a solution. The Breakthrough victory was so hurting. It hurt us so bad to see the game get that mangled by us introducing this thing that we had wanted to put in the game for so long, and we were trying to find a pathway there. We just always knew it's like games are cool when you have when you have an alternate win condition and you can zig instead of zag in a game to win in a different way. And we definitely have seen a lot of players gravitate to trying to figure out the Breakthrough win condition since we've been introducing it to people. So it really hurt us when we were like, okay, this is broken, and we didn't know how to fix it. And we had like probably a day and a half, 2 days, maybe longer of conversation. And it's kind of a complicated solution, but basically we had to lock the Breakthrough win condition behind the main win condition. We had to say, to win the game normally, you have to complete 5 adventures, and basically you have to get to the final quest and complete one more adventure. We decided that you have to make it true for the Breakthrough victory. Otherwise, it's just such a, it's like like, I don't know, if you could drive backwards to go over the finish line and complete a race that way. It's just so breaking of the game. So we decided to lock Breakthrough behind. You had to be in the final quest for the Breakthrough win condition to work. And I think that made such a big difference. And it's amazing how long it took us to get there, but we talked through a lot of different solutions. We talked about just increasing the number from 7 to like 10, and a few other things. But we also made Breakthrough, you had to have 3 matching leads instead of just, and you had to discard 3 matching leads instead of just discarding 3 of any lead, which made it a much something you wouldn't just do every turn.
The really important aspect of locking it behind the final quest was that we had to find a way to ensure that people were incentivized to continue to complete adventures, because part of what broke the game so badly was the idea that you didn't have to do anything with adventures in order to win the game. And if you don't have to do anything with adventures, again, that lets you be perpetually behind and have access to all the fun tools that you get when you're behind, and really warps the game. So locking it behind the final quest was absolutely necessary to incentivize players to play the game the way we wanted them to.
Yeah. And when it came to the infiltrate dig within conundrum, the combo that was breaking the game there, that one we actually figured out in the moment. It was, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but we were sitting there and I just like talking through the problem that the combo presented, and I just stated, okay, what if instead of you can infiltrate and dig within if you're tied or behind, what if it's you can dig within or infiltrate? You can only do one on your turn. And sometimes the simplest solution is the most elegant and the correct one, because we haven't even talked, I think, since we pitched that and changed it. I don't think we've talked about any alternatives. I feel like every now and then we're like, well, what else could we do with the Breakthrough win condition? How could we modify it further? And sometimes we have a little thought experiment, but when it comes to the dig within, infiltrate, it hasn't even been really a topic of conversation until today, until we're telling the story right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That pretty well summarizes it. I mean, again, just to kind of wrap it up, you know, go out there, find people to break your game, be grateful when they do. You don't want to ship a broken game. Don't be discouraged when the game breaks. If you sleep on it, you spend time, and you're creative, you'll figure it out. You know, focus on how you can incentivize your players to do what you want them to do, and you'll be okay.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I mean, I guess if you do end up shipping a broken game, just embrace how it's broken and try to make a new game out of it, if you will. So, to go over what we're going to be talking about next time, in on the official Mega Moth. Wait, how does it go again? The official Mega Moth Studio podcast.
Mega Moth Studios.
That's what we're called.
The official Mega Moth
Yeah.
Studios podcast.
The official Mega Moth Studios podcast. So what we're going to be covering next time is tension and drama. So if this episode was all about like kind of mechanics and in teaching the game, the next episode is going to be about how to create turn your game from just being a set of mechanics into actually being an experiential story. And we have at the very least two ways that we infuse that into X Secrets of Fortune that we were very intentional about. And we're going to let you in on all of that in the next episode, which should be coming next week. So before we get to our outro, Danny, it's time for me to be tortured. I believe you have a little something for me.
I sure do. I do think that this week you'll find it less torturous.
Okay.
But I can't make any promises.
We'll see. I'll be the judge. Well, I will tell you it's going to be torturous no matter what, because I'm looking forward to getting to the end of the episode so I can take a restroom break.
Okay. Well, do you want to break to go to the bathroom and come back and do this?
No. I want the tension of having to wait.
Okay. All right. All
okay.
Right. So I need your
go.
participation for this. We're going to do something that is a little bit different today. I'll explain what it is, but only after I get you to commit to some things. So, first.
Go ahead.
I need you to give me 3 categories, just random categories. First 3 categories that come to your mind.
That's such a broad question. Categories, I guess, cars. Okay. Does that count as a category?
That counts as a category.
Now, for some reason, road signs.
Road signs, okay.
You can see where my brain's at.
Yeah. Give me a wild card.
I'm trying to go movie theater snacks.
Okay, movie theater snacks. Let's do movie theater snacks. Okay, cool. All right, so this is going to be something that we do periodically. I think it's going to be super fun. Although I'm going to have to figure out different ways to come up with different categories. But so we're going to do movie theater snacks. You ready? So this is a flash draft. So we each have to take turns drafting our top 5 movie theater snacks. Once it's been picked, you cannot pick it. So you get your first round pick. Oh my goodness. So you gotta be careful. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off here and give you the first round pick for movie theater snacks. So what are you gonna take with your first round pick?
I mean, my girlfriend would kill me if I didn't pick this one, and I think it's going to be fairly obvious to anybody listening. No, it's not going to be controversial at all. It's going to be popcorn.
Okay.
I feel like it had to be the first pick. If I didn't pick that first, I think the comment section, if we have a comment section, would be a fire.
Okay. No. That's good. That's good. I'm gonna go a little less traditional here, still within the realm of traditional. I'm going to go for nachos. I'm going to take nachos with my first round pick. I like, even though it's very rare that you get anything that resembles a real nacho at a movie theater, unless you're going to like an Alamo Draft House or something like that, usually you get like some sort of highly processed cheese dip. I don't know. I mean, it feels like highly processed cheese dip has a place in the world. So.
Yeah, at movie theaters and ball games.
Yeah, exactly. All right, what's your second round pick?
Okay, cool. I don't know if this counts, but I got to have the combo here. Okay. I'm going to say a soda pop.
Okay, I think that counts. I thought about taking soda, but ultimately I opted not to because I really wanted some processed cheese dip. All right, so number 4, I'm going to take a hot dog. Every now and then I really love a good old-fashioned hot dog, and a movie theater and that foil wrap. I'm in for a hot dog.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I saw like that style of hot dog at a movie theater, but I do know what you mean. And there is something like that's a hot dog that you cannot make at home. There is something about the way they cook it or the ingredients that they get. It has just, the bun is just this right level of wet.
Yeah, they steam the bun. I don't know the right level of wet.
That might be it.
Steaming the bun is the right level of wet for a hot dog bun.
I know, but for some reason, there's like something appealing, even if it's not like what you would want. There's something appealing about it. So I totally get that. So okay, I guess what I'm trying to do is see if I could get my full combo on at this point, because we got the popcorn, we got the soda pop, probably Coke Zero for me at this day and age if they have it, and
definitely.
if they don't, Diet Dr Pepper is my follow up after they don't have Coke Zero, and if they don't have either of those, then I'm just asking for a refund on the soda. But I'm going to try sneakily to get. So this might be the controversial pick. I'm somebody who likes a chocolatey candy to go with my popcorn. That salty savory thing. Or sweet and savory is just one of my favorite flavor combinations. So I'm trying to think what would be. I mean, M&Ms are not bad. Some people go for the Milk Duds, and I have to give them credit. That is amazing, but it's also a little much for me and my teeth. So I like. This might not be the same kind of sweet, but I think it pairs really well with the popcorn. I'm going to go with Reese's. Pieces. You put that on top of your popcorn and you kind of swirl it around. You get a little Reese's in your popcorn. It's just delicious. And it kind of adds a different kind of crunch and texture in there too.
I don't think that's very controversial. I do have to ask you though, because it's obviously. So are Milk Duds out because they chafe your mouth?
No, it's actually, and you know what? I do need to try Milk Duds again. I think I went way longer in my life without addressing a couple of cavities. And because of that, during probably this over 5-year span, I think that sugary foods, sugary foods that, stick to your teeth really lost their appeal, because I was like stubbornly just being like, well, I just think I have sensitive teeth. And it's like, no, buddy, you have cavities and you need to get those drilled out of your head. But I think Milk Duds, I just got an aversion to, but it could have changed. Like, I need to try a Milk Dud again. Maybe it's not as bad as it was.
Are they Brace Gang
Maybe
approved?
I don't think so. Next time I see some Milk Duds, I'm going to pick some up and I'll tell you just how they go these days. But I do know, like, if you have real fresh popcorn and Milk Duds, it's like the Milk Duds just get to melt a little, and it makes it like so much easier to eat, and they kind of coat the popcorn. So I get the Milk Duds, and I fully support Milk Dud eaters. It's just not quite for me at the moment, and I hope to go back.
You fully support Milk Dud eaters. Probably one of my favorite sound bites from this episode. Okay, I'm going to take with my third round pick, soft pretzel.
Oh my goodness, you are rounding out like the actual food.
Well, you know what?
I would say, like, you're actually making a meal.
I love soft pretzels. They're like one of my things. I get them whenever I can. And look, I don't want to put anyone on blast here, but Star Cinema Grill in the Houston area, you had amazing pretzels. I went there for the pretzels, and then the last time I go, you served me the same pretzel, but instead of a gargantuan 2 pretzels, we're down to 3 little rods. I mean, it's like, come on, guys, what are we doing here? You were the best pretzel game in town, and now you're a nobody. Not really. I mean, they're still really good, but there's just not enough.
Some bottom line guy came in there and was like, we're making 25 cents on the pretzel and we need to be making 75 cents on the pretzel. So we're going to downgrade this and charge the same amount. You know what? I can't support that sort of thing. Sometimes you have to have a loss leader. That pretzel probably got you in the door multiple times. You could have chosen any movie theater, but you chose them for the pretzel.
That is actually true. Some days I wake up and I'm like, hey, I want a pretzel. I guess I'm going to see a movie today. You know? And then now it's just kind of like, well, I guess I'm not. I found somebody else who's got a pretzel that's not as good as Star Cinema, but is closer to what they used to have than what they have currently. So now I go there to have my pretzel.
Okay. So now remind me, Dan, I got popcorn, I got soda, I got Reese's
so you're
Pieces.
On your 4.
So I still have two. I still have 2
Don't
picks. Okay.
Don't waste them. These got to be good.
Don't waste them. Oh, it's Tom Hanks at the end of Saving Private Ryan. Don't waste it. It's like, I have a partner, and she is like, I'll say this. I'm a weirdo sometimes, folks. Like, you got to understand this. If you haven't picked this up already, I can go to a movie by myself, order nothing, and just sit there and watch the movie. Like, and I do that to save money. Like whenever I go to the theater by myself, but now I'm with a partner and she insists, like, it's like she could be full from dinner and she still insists on picking up movie theater candies. And so I have to think about her, like, in my picks. And, I'm going to just go ahead and make this pick one. Like, the popcorn, we agree upon. The Reese's on top of the popcorn, we agree upon. The soda pop, she might want lemonade, but hey, we can get lemonade first and I can refill with my Coke Zero. But something that I wouldn't normally pick for myself, but I'm doing it for her, because sometimes you got to, it's red vines.
Oh, red vines are great. She has excellent taste.
Yeah. Yes, you know what? She's converted me a little. It's one of those things. If red vines are near me, I'll eat one, but I probably wouldn't go out of my way to buy a package of red vines myself.
How often are red vines near you?
Whenever I'm at a movie with my girlfriend, I guess. And then like the following days, the package is probably lingering around. I'll pick it up and have like one or two, here and there.
Red vines is a good one. I'm not going to complain about red vines. No complaints there.
Oh, though I will say, biting it off and using it as a straw, now that is something that's fun.
Ooh. Although having a sugar straw and a sugar drink often kind of, one of those two things is getting diminished. You can't do a sugar and a sugar at the same time. Like, especially a sugary drink after eating some sugar. I mean, the sugary drink just loses its sugariness.
That is true. That is true.
Something to think about.
Well, that's actually a tip I would say. I don't know if this is a tip, but maybe experiment. I had a Coke float, a few years ago. I haven't had this in a while, or at the very least, I had like an ice cream and a soda, and I got a diet soda and to go with like a vanilla ice cream. And I was like, this gives me all the cola flavor, but lets the ice cream do the sugary side of it. It's like actually, I might even suggest better to do your Coke floats with a diet version of your soda of choice.
Yeah, and that's not a bad idea. I will say I'm a little disappointed now because I feel like I should have a candy. Also because I'm like, what else can you get from a normal movie theater snack stand? I don't think I'm going for the pickle right now. I mean, I know there are people out there who are definitely pickle people. I'm not the kind of person who wants to munch down on an enormous pickle in the middle of a movie. I love pickles, don't get me wrong, but it's not like a movie theater vibe for me. All right. Red vines would have been my candy pick, so I feel like you sniped that one. I'm a little angry about it, a little frustrated. There's some really weird candies that you really don't see anywhere besides movie theaters, like juju fruits and snow caps. Like, but I'm not taking those. Not taking Good and Plenty, although Good and Plenty is like my dad's jam. I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna take the peanut M&Ms. The peanut M&Ms, the classic. A little bit of chocolate, a little bit of peanut. Not so far removed from Reese's Pieces. Frankly, I probably would have taken Reese's Pieces over this, but we're talking fourth pick, and I've got second pick. So, all right, we're gonna go peanut M&Ms.
Okay.
Final pick.
Yeah.
Joel.
I know, and you know what? I'm already at a feast level. Like, and then one of the things I love to go with is what is enough is a feast. If you have enough, then you might as well have a feast. There's no reason to have extra. But I do have 5 picks. I need to pick. Like what would be if I didn't get something from earlier? What would fill in here? And part of me, like movie theater candy, I feel like in the 90s it would have been the same all the way down. Like every theater you go to would have all had the same offerings, since the hot dogs, the nachos, the pretzels are almost of the past when it comes to movie theaters. And I'm trying to think, what about the unconventional stuff? Like if you go to an Alamo Drafthouse, I could say beer or a cocktail or a milkshake, or pizza. The Alamo Drafthouse offers all of those. And I used to work at 2 different movie theaters that had some off the wall eclectic, things. I would say. So I'm going to go with the unconventional, something you would probably find at a movie theater this day and age. And I'm going to say a Americano. Like, sometimes you go and see a late movie and you really want to see the movie, but the day has really taken it out of you. And you just know, like, I need that extra little bit of buzz to focus in on this. So, I've often taken in, it's like the soda's there for the flavor. The Americano, that's there. for the purpose, the caffeinated purpose. So I'm gonna answer that.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna stick to traditional movie theater snacks because I feel like rounded out, and honestly, as much as I dogged on it for round 4, I kind of feel like I'm stuck with the pickle. So
Pickle. I mean, I like. Don't get me wrong. I like pickles, but it has to be. I prefer it to be fried.
Ooh, fried pickles.
Chips.
That would be good. We had fried pickles not too long ago together.
Oh, they were so good. And here you called out your local theater. I'm going to call it the Alamo Drafthouse as a whole. You guys used to have an amazing fried pickle with an amazing aioli to dip it in, or ranch. Maybe it was a homemade ranch, and then it went from the pickle chips like every place should have to these long stringy style pickle fries. And I am like my girlfriend and I got that one time, and we just knew never again. They were just not. It's like you want something from fried pickles, and this was a completely out of left field, and just does not hold up. Maybe the way that they were hoping for it to. Hopefully they go back, but
yeah, absolutely. And Sonic has terrible fried pickles as well. I don't like Sonic's fried pickles, and Subway sucks as well.
Well, I didn't even know that those two places.
No,
had
Subway
them.
doesn't have them. They just suck.
Well, amen to that, brother. We can agree on that one. Well, if that took care of the something random for this week, which was quite random, I wasn't expecting to sit and think so hard and long about like my movie theater snacks of choice. I think we're ready to just wrap this episode up. So I just want to just making sure, Danny, were you good?
I'm good.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go ahead and do some of our outro stuff because I need to go to the bathroom. So you might have noticed that we are now rocking a nice theme music, and that theme music is by our good friend James Hilden. And our episodes are always produced and edited by William Wymore. Now, we have some social medias for you to check out. If you want to check us out on TikTok, if you're a Zoomer and that's your social media of choice, you can check us out at Mega Moth Studios, all one word. Danny curates that stream, and he's doing a fantastic job of it.
TikTok is for Zoomers and other people as well. Millennials
with ADHD.
Gen X. Yeah. I don't want to.
Gen X.
We'll cut it off there.
I would love to see. We should go and watch Boomer TikTok as like maybe that could be a stretch goal, as we just have to sit through Boomer TikTok. So if you want to check us out on Instagram, if you're more of a picture person than a video person, you can see us at X_seekers_of_fortune. And Facebook, it's just straight X Seekers of Fortune, just, not one word with the spaces, no underscores. And then there's the big exciting news that is this news is a few weeks old by the time you hear it, but you can play the demo version of X Seekers of Fortune right now on the internet. You can find details on our website, but if you have a Tabletopia account, you can search us out there and play. You just need to bring your own rival for right now.
Yeah, actually, cool thing. I mean, at least right now, who knows what's going to happen? But if you Google X Seekers of Fortune, it's probably going to be the second thing you find is the Tabletopia link, which will take you to the lobby and you can play.
Yeah.
So it's not hard to find.
And the first thing you would find would be our website, which would also have links to the Tabletopia. So no excuses.
Both of options.
Google X Seekers. Yeah. You know what? Check us out on Google. X Seekers of Fortune. You can find us there.
Follow your fortune.
Excellent. All right. Well, Danny, you have anything to say to the folks before we go?
Yeah. Be cool. Stay safe.
Be cool and stay safe, Fortune Seekers, and we'll see you next time.
Later, guys.